Welcome to the Flaman Connect podcast, a podcast focused on the individual pieces that make up the larger community of people together, doing what's right and making a difference. Today's hosts, we have myself, Trevor Grinde, Regan Kunz, and Mitch Flaman. Did you know that agriculture supplied $1.053 trillion to the U.S. gross domestic product in 2017, which makes it the 16th largest economy in the world if treated as its own country?
Mm-hmm. Can you say that again, please? 1.05 trillion?
Yeah.
Read the whole thing again, please.
Okay, agriculture supplied $1.053 trillion to the U.S. gross domestic product in 2017, which would make it the 16th largest economy in the world if treated as its own country. Isn't that crazy?
That's incredible.
Pop quiz. How many tomatoes are in a 32-ounce bottle of ketchup?
32 ounces of... No, just kidding. I don't know. It's like, how much butter's in a pound of butter? A pound of it.
Boy.
Oh.
So, ask that again?
Yeah.
How many tomatoes are in a 32-ounce bottle of ketchup?
A dozen.
I'm going to go more, way more, like 30.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the multiple choice now. It's 1, 4, 8, or 11.
11.
11. One.
Do you have,
one. No, I'm in the other way.
They stretched the hell out of that tomato.
Yeah. It was a really big tomato.
Yeah.
Do you have it?
Yeah,
You're going with one?
My
Okay, so
one.
According to the question, assuming that a tomato is 8 ounces, or 6 ounces, there are about 8 tomatoes in a 32-ounce bottle of ketchup.
There you go.
About 8.
That's where my original train of thought was. So how 32 ounces? Well, there's 32 ounces of tomatoes in there then. But
you're right. There is.
Yeah.
But how many tomatoes?
Wow.
What are you dividing by?
No, and then after I was like, no, I think the point of this question is there isn't much for tomatoes and ketchup. She's all fake.
There's probably some corn in there as well as far as the sugar content is concerned.
Some vinegar.
Have we talked about purple ketchup on this podcast?
I don't believe we have.
This question, I'll say this discussion came up the other day with my wife and I. And anyway, so I went to school. I have a marketing degree. And this was an example that came up in there because in theory, and even with all the market research, it made a ton of sense. Okay. It's fun. Like purple ketchup, it's for the kids. It's all the research showed. Yeah. When they launched her, flop, huge flop, because people want to see what they know. Ketchup is red.
Don't change it.
And they have like almost like an emotional attachment to just how that habit is. Like how that you pull it out of the fridge, it feels like this, it looks like this.
Especially with ketchup, because there's people that won't, if it's not Heinz, I'm not eating it.
Exactly.
Well, I was going to say, have you guys tried other ketchups and what is in your fridge right now?
Well, didn't we have to? Okay, well, it's French's ketchup and Heinz ketchup. That was it.
That's what it was.
Heinz pulled out, and then, and I think you couldn't get it or whatever, so in Canada you had to get French's.
And you know what's really weird right now? Because in my fridge right now, I have French's ketchup, and I have Heinz mustard.
Oh, buddy. Oh. How old are each of those things?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember clear Pepsi? So that's another one where people, have an expectation when they pour the Pepsi into a glass, and what is this?
Invisible cola.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly,
no sense.
The consumer decision making aspect that goes on in there is even when they changed the
Coke formula.
Yep. You remember that?
Yeah.
Then they went back to the Coke Classic.
It just, there's something about if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
I don't want new Coke. I want regular Coke.
I don't want purple tomatoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that's where I thought that was going, is the amount of stuff that's in ketchup. I don't imagine there's a ton of tomatoes in there. But no, I did think there was lots in there.
Yeah. Okay, agriculture is the largest employer in the world. What is second? Automotive, import-export, retail, or artisan?
Import-export is such a vast category.
I would go there, but that seems tricky. Going with automotive. I'm automotive.
I'll go with retail.
Okay. You're neither one are right.
Okay.
It's actually artisan.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
But you have to think of how many like non-developed countries, that's how they make their living, like making bracelets, making jewelry, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, artisan is
after this podcast season is done, I'm going to call you Tricky Trevor for the remainder of me knowing you. On the mic with Tricky Trevor.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time for Now You Know. It's where we talk to people, experts in the ag industry. Today we're talking with David Fielding with TopKrop. Tell us, David, does foliar feeding really work?
Those who argue that foliar feeding does not work, but still use herbicide and insecticide and fungicide they're not seeing the whole picture, because in broadleaf applications of herbicide translocate through the leaf surface. If you can do it with a herbicide, you can do it with nutrients.
Mm-hmm. And is it safe to say that is the argument? Like when you bump up against people saying foliar applications don't work. That's not the way the plant is designed. Would you say that's why that argument exists, is because people don't believe that nutrients can also be taken in through the leaf surface?
Right. There's a couple arguments there. One is that the atom size is too large. Mm-hmm. Well, we can calculate, or we know what the size of each one of those ions is. We can break it down and say, something that is ammonium nitrate based. Well, NH4NO3, that NH4 has an overall size. That NO3 has an overall size. And the one of the largest ions or salts that I can find or that I have seen in the past is dipotassium phosphate. And its overall size as a unit passing through the leaf surface is like having a truck be in a swimming pool.
Got it.
The atom is the truck, and the swimming pool is the orifice that it passes through. I mean, it's so large in comparison to each one of these salt units that, like I said, once you match the polarity on the leaf, it has no choice, right? Mm-hmm. When you mix honey or mix olive oil with spearmint or wintergreen or mint in general, what you're doing is you're running a non-polar extraction. Now, the things that you want to come out of there are going to come out of there, but all of the other essential oils that are coming out of that system are also coming out of that system, and they don't have a choice. Same thing happens on the leaf surface when you pass the waxy cuticular pore. Yeah, it boggles my mind from time to time when in the same breath, somebody says foliar feeding doesn't work. And we ask, do you use Roundup? Yes. Does it work for you? Yes. Then you use foliar feeding.
Why do you think people say that?
It very much goes against tradition. I think that's the reason why is people aren't adaptive to change, especially in farming practices. It happens with evolution, but there's still a lot of, and I've been saying that for years is, agriculture is one of the only industries where you put all your groceries, everything into the field at once, and you roll the dice, and hopefully Mother Nature comes. And, where you're originally from down in the U.S. is foliar applied nutrients or fertilizers is a practice that's been used for years and years and years. And that might have a lot to do with the amount of nitrogen that you guys put or the U.S. puts on corn versus the crops that we have today.
Same with liquid versus dry applications of fertilizer. The farm sizes that are in Canada sometimes are prohibitively large when we want to put liquid in furrow as much as we would like to do it. Yep. It may just not make sense because you take too many trips to a liquid tank and it just takes too much time to plant.
It's bulky.
It is.
Yep.
And farm sizes in the United States are much, much smaller. And that's something that has allowed them to have roughly a 50-50 split versus I think it's 85-15 dry to liquid up here when it comes to in-furrow or soil applications of fertilizer.
You include anhydrous in that traditional or liquid form, or is he granular? What do you consider? Because there's a lot of anhydrous that goes on that gets applied here.
Same in the United States. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about resistance to change or how things may, you've made the investment, right?
Yep.
You've put an ammonia tank on your machine, and this is what you're going to do. Change takes mentality, change takes dollars, change takes time.
So what would you say the biggest benefit of changing the logistics in your process to incorporate foliar would be? What's the biggest benefit of using foliar products?
You can mix it every time that you go out into the field. You're not limited on when you can apply it. It's mostly for, after seeding. Once you have post-emerge and you're up and out of the ground and all of the power plants on the leaf are doing their job, you can, the next time that you go out, maybe for herbicide, put in a slow release nitrogen product, put in micronutrients, find a way to make that trip more worth it.
Yep.
Using slow release nitrogen can allow you to do that. Because you mix a micronutrient with a slow release nitrogen, that micronutrient foliar feeds. You mix a phos, you mix a potash, you mix a sulfur. As long as you match the polarity that's on the leaf to within a margin of error, it has no choice but to pass that barrier.
You're basically just jumping on the bus that's already going by.
Exactly.
You're using it as the vehicle to get in the plant as absorption.
And there you have it. Thanks, David. We're going to move on to our last segment of our show today, and that's an interview with our special guest. Our guest today is Sid from Meridian, so welcome.
Thanks for the invite.
Well, let's take some time to get to know Sid a little bit. Where are you from originally?
I was raised in Strome, Alberta, small town Strome. It's only about an hour east of Camrose, where I live right now. And my wife was a farm girl as well from Cedric was the name of the community. So her claim to fame was that she was rode the bus and neighbors with Kevin Martin. So there's some history there. And my claim to fame was we were just school rivals. We don't ask me how we got together, but anyway, it was all good. Yeah. These small town communities, you get school rivals going.
So you grew up on a farm?
Yes, yeah.
What was it like for you as a child? What are some of your earliest memories?
Well, we had a mixed operation. We probably had as much emphasis on our cattle as we did the grains. I would say compared to anything nowadays, a small farm, but wouldn't trade. It was the best life as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
How many siblings you got?
How many siblings? 2. I had 2.
Where do you fit?
1 left. I'm the oldest.
Oh yeah.
And don't get into the difference between the oldest and youngest, because I deal with that with 3 daughters. So the oldest is the best. I'm going to say the most deserving, but that doesn't always happen. It's all good.
The oldest paves the way, something like that.
Yeah.
All I can relate to is I'm the youngest, and it's the best. You just everyone just forgets about you, and all the hard stuff's done, and you just kind of, your parents by that point, I think you can just do what you want as long as your brother takes you to and from the party.
Yeah. Well, and potentially for you, I'm sure Ryan left a really wide wake for you to just follow in between and really not get into too much trouble.
Yeah,
but,
it really wasn't hard to just abide and not get in too much trouble, because the goalposts on the limits Ryan set, they were pretty wide. And even April, as much as we think April's like the golden child, because like she is, No, there was a few years in there where she widened the goalposts a little bit more. So by the time I came up, there was no curfews, there was no nothing. I just had to be at church first thing in the morning. So it didn't even matter where I slept typically. And the amount of times I'd get my parents or my friends' parents to drive me to church was Yeah, there's lots.
You're still showing up in your Metallica T-shirt
Yeah,
at church on
exactly.
Sunday morning.
Exactly.
Okay, so I raised 3 daughters, and I didn't realize that there was actually significance with the youngest child syndrome and the oldest child. It was the middle child they say gets the most abuse, but our youngest daughter, you're right that there was no rules by the time that she come along, no curfews or time limits, but she was the best kid. All of our girls
See?
were 100%.
I'm telling you.
But our youngest, she would call and ask permission to skip class because for whatever the logical reason she had to skip class. But that's just how good.
Is it really skipping class if your parents know?
No.
No, I don't think so.
it's
I think
not.
that's almost like a sick day.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That's a pass. That's
Yeah.
a pass.
It's different too, like the parenting style when you have your first one compared to your third one. Because your first one, you drop the soother, you take it and you boil it.
Yep.
And you make sure it's all the right temperature and you stick it back in. The third one, you just pick it up.
Shake. Yeah.
Okay,
shake
there
it
you
off.
go.
So I'm learning a lot about myself as the youngest, the third kid in my family, because we just have, so our youngest now is our third child, and she just turned 1 here a couple months ago. And I just watch how my wife treats her compared to how she treated our oldest, Warner. Same thing. Warner was like a boil the soother, kind of like just a big deal. Quinn runs around the house doing whatever she wants, and as long as she's not falling down the stairs, because she's always breaking stuff, so we kind of put a gate up. But other than that, as long as she's not crying, that house is whatever she wants it to be. And my wife's just like, yeah, whatever, she's fine. Yeah. So I get now, like, just what my upbringing must have been, and my mom just being, tired. There's 2 other kids. Mitch, just as long as you're safe and not crying, go do whatever you want. It's like, yeah, got it.
So Sid, as the oldest, did you feel coddled, or did you think your parents were potentially a little harder on you than the other siblings?
I probably back then I would have said they were harder on me because being the oldest, because of mixed farming, that you're doing chores and there's lots of work to do. But the part that I loved about it was learning the work ethic. Like my great brother and sister, but I believe truthfully that I was taught, there's things that have to get done, and you're part of that, and it just made such a difference in life to be able to do that and learn those things and responsibilities. But
Yep.
You asked the question about what do you do raising on a farm, and I don't think about it very much. But I couldn't imagine not being raised on a farm. The things that get learnt, even just driving vehicles and equipment, some of it just becomes intuitive. Work mechanically, you're working with equipment, so you're trying to fix stuff. You don't right away run it down to a local shop to try and get it fixed. You're going to try and tweak it yourself first, wreck it a little bit more, and then you take it in, right?
When I was young, and I must have been 6 or 7, and you're on the farm, you're just messing around with stuff, and I had a hydraulic hose, and like, what's this little silver ball on here? What happens if I just press this against the tire? And of course, covered me completely in hydraulic oil, in my eyes, everything. But those are the things you learn on the farm as a kid, right? I also learned, I think it was 5 or 6 years old, that if you take a pitchfork and you punch it into the sidewall of a grain truck tire, it makes a really cool sound.
I heard this story. What did your dad say?
Oh, it was Grandpa, and Grandpa was mad.
So why
Needless to say,
that?
when we went to the Lakeland Co-op that day, I did not get a Coke. That normally happens when we go to the Co-op. I did not get a Coke that day. No treats for me.
So Sid, what was your first job off of the family farm?
First job off the farm was actually working for another farmer, family friend, and just running equipment. But yeah, most of everything I've done in life, the different jobs have been either related, 100% in the ag industry, to working on farms. So another job I did too shortly after that was working for a large feedlot. And so I thought we had a lot of critters until, 200-300 cows is a pretty good sized operation back then, but suddenly when you're working with thousands of cattle in a feedlot, different dynamics altogether. But from running fertilizer plants, I was in the grain trade. Worked for 8-9 years with Richardson's. Worked for the terminal in Vancouver more. I was their Alberta canola coordinator, so I dealt with all the canola trading and stuff. And it was fun. It's been a good life.
So how did you find your way to Meridian? How did that happen? Or how did you find your way to Wheat Belt sales, I should say?
Yeah, good question. So I played hockey. I was in the hockey team. I didn't play last night, by the way. That was an awesome event you guys put together. I mean, totally cool. But so I played on the Meridian. It was called the Wheatland Ducks at the time. And so I knew the ownership and knew Glenn Friesen, who is still my boss today. And he would tell the story the same way if Glenn was here. He would say, Sid came into his office and says, you need to hire me. I'm going to be working here. And that's the honest truth. It was something had broke on my vehicle. And so one of the guys from the hockey team says, just come over and we'll weld it in the back shop. So after hours, I pull in the back door, big doors go up and drive in there and tic-tac and it's all done. And just as I drove in, I says, I need to be working here. I need to be working here. And I was early 30s at the time, and I won't tell you how old. I guess that does tell how old I am. But anyway, yeah, it's been. I went in and Glenn slowly he decided, I need a sales guy because he was doing all the Western Canada by himself, and he didn't give me keys. So here's the initiation into this company, just the trust immediately. It was August. And he wouldn't give me a key for the office. He forgot to do that. But he says, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And okay, there's, price list, whatever. Like, who do I call? Dealers, stuff like that. And by the way, the janitor room window, you can get in and out of there. So that's how I got into my office. The janitor room was my office, and I had no key for a couple of weeks. But it's been excellent. It's been very good.
Awesome. So, well, let's then, I guess we could say fast forward, but if I timestamp this, I'm going to say this is about 80s or so, and I would ask you when you started working with Flaman. But if I really think back, Flaman was already working with Meridian prior to Sid.
Actually, my first experience with Flaman was in not this hall, but this building.
Oh, yeah.
And so back in the grain trade, that would have been late 80s, early 90s, we used to have all the Saskatchewan Ag Commodity Association meetings were held at Sask-In. And we actually did a trade show there. So all the suppliers and grain companies and people who were involved, we would set up tables. We'd all get tabletop booths, and we'd set them in the courtyard at Sask-In. And it just got too busy, and everybody wanted a little bit more space and blah, blah, blah. And you know what the ramps are all like, trying to facilitate that. So that's when it moved down to Prairie Land here. And I think it was a Monday evening, just Monday evening only, where they had larger displays, and we'd set up a little bit of equipment. So my first experience with Flaman, you guys were, I met Henry and some of the guys from Convey-All. You guys were handling Convey-All conveyors at the time.
Yeah.
And I met some of the Flaman guys there. That was a long time ago. A long time ago. In fact, I think the Convey-All was gray at the time. That was my first experience with Flaman. And then one of our guys that used to work for us, Everald Olson, which still works for you guys in Alberta.
Everald was a Meridian guy prior to a Flaman guy?
He was a Meridian guy before a Flaman guy. Wheatland bins. Sorry, I just keep it current. Yeah. So, he was a buddy of mine, a neighbor, and lived down the street from us. So, yeah.
Everald has to have been with Flaman for over 30 years. Yeah.
So the one thing I do know about Meridian, or I have heard, is you guys do have a very strong culture. Can you talk a little bit about the culture at Meridian and maybe, your viewpoint on what it is or what you're trying to contribute to that culture?
Yeah, that's, good questions you guys ask, because it always makes you think internally a little bit, and we always try to look at what other people are doing. But Meridian does have a great culture. We have distinct teams, I guess you could say that. We have our production and operations team. We have our logistics team, and we've got our sales and marketing team. We try to run that together, even though marketing doesn't get out there and do the selling per se, and sales doesn't per se do the marketing, but they work very closely together. But so within those groups, they're a tight community. They really are. Like, we try to support each other with, whether it's helping out with training ourselves, our new guys. Even when we have dealers that we need to help out, we try to all hands on deck, stuff like that. You come to an event like you guys are putting on here, Ag Connect, it's all hands on deck. We brought every Canadian RSM in here that deals with the Flaman network. And so that's strong. On the production side, same thing. They work together, where even some of our our production managers and directors of operations, they'll do multiple. They cover multiple locations, so that culture isn't completely unique at every place. Even the different staff, yes, we have different needs in Camrose than we do in Regina and we do in Winkler. But because there's that commonality of some of the leadership, that culture gets moved around and it spreads throughout the whole community. We've got a ton of guys that are like, I'm 28 years old, or 28, not years old, 28 years with the company. And but we've got a lot of guys that are well into their 30s, and it's got to be close to 10 guys that are in their 40 past their 40th anniversary, 43.
That's great.
44. Glenn's 42, I think it is, years with the company. So, and you don't get that if it's not a good place to work. You don't get that if there's no pride in the company as well as pride in what you do and who you work for. It's a family-owned business. Russ and Ed Edwards out of Winnipeg own the company, and even though they're not necessarily involved daily operations, he, for the most part, tries to get into the office every day. He's well into his 80s, so he turned that over many years ago to capable people. So yeah, it's good to be part of a family company, not a publicly traded. And I say that not to put anybody down. It's just there is a different culture in a private company. Family involvement, you're answering to family, not a bunch of shareholders, even though they're shareholders, right? The family is the shareholders, but it's different culture. And
I can attest to that. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Sid, so you've got a few pieces of equipment on the floor. One of the most interesting is the Volt. Yes. Can you talk a bit about that?
I can talk about the Volt. We're actually very excited about it. But maybe just to back it up just a little bit, the Volt is new and is exciting. And we're proud that it's part of the ag industry. That's where, and I think ag is the innovation. That's where so much innovation begins, is in agriculture, and even to the point of aerospace, things like that. Things are tried and tested on the farm. Most urbanites, they say, well, that's garbage, but that's the truth. At Meridian and many of companies like us, there's not anything new and sexy for the most part. Like, we're in the storage business. What can you change on a smooth wall bin? So, we went from it being made and rolled on a cement floor and welded together, and then they brush paint on to, okay, now we got some really nice paint booths and we're still spraying on, and then we moved in the late 90s. We started powder coating, so now we have 5 of the world's largest powder bake ovens. So that was innovation for us, but the output was still a smooth wall bin, a hopper bin, right? So along comes the Volt, and there's such a swing to try to create different energy and to use different energy, and well, how does that apply to agriculture? It's never going to happen. But we took Convey-All. It started with the Convey-All conveyor, and we pulled off the engine. We left all the hydraulics, everything that drives the conveyor itself, other than its power source. We took that off and we put on a bunch of batteries, lithium batteries. And I'm going to say, honestly, I think to our surprise, it works really good. Everybody was pretty pumped. Yeah. And so you're worried about, like, what are we out, minus 30 right now or something like that today? It's terrible. And so the question is always, well, how is it going to work in the cold weather? How often do you have to charge it? Like, what are you going to? You can't take it out remotely because you need a battery, a power supply to charge it. And we're slowly learning that there are so many applications for battery, whether it's a grain auger, conveyor, and other, even our CST. Like, we can convert that to battery as well. But it works good. The capacity is potentially going to be better than our engines, because using computer, we're able to plug in and we can do some coding in the control system it's like changing the horsepower on your engine or changing the engine to bigger horsepower. We're able to do that. Of course, that affects how long your batteries last, but it's pretty cool how this thing works. And the applications, well, let's talk what's sort of happened a bit, I guess, at some of the places we've taken it. This thing's traveled a lot across North America. Its last visit at a large event was the Agri-Trade in Red Deer. And the first thing that happens when a farmer comes in there, he says, really, what are you guys doing? Like, do you guys realize how cold it gets? Everybody's negative. Everybody. There's not one exception to that. But I don't think that we had one guy leave that didn't say, that is a really cool idea. I could see it happening here. I could see you using it here. And you start to see where this makes sense. And are we going to replace all the gas engines? No. But we're taking it now in February. We're doing the trade show run here in Western Canada till the end of to mid-January. I think the last one will be Manitoba Ag Days. And then we're taking it down to Tulare to World Ag Expo. So why would we take it there? Well, because I think it's January 1 or very soon here, you can't sell gas engine under 100 horsepower. You got to have a different source. Yeah, you can use your old ones, yes, but you can't. You got to have a new source of power. So we've got a lot of interest already from around the world on that unit there for that application to run conveyors, run an auger.
Yeah. Can you talk about a little bit about the design concept to where it is now and the paces you put it through to actually get it to work as well as it does?
I also want to know the thought, okay? So, like, some of the biggest deals I've done in my life had to do with a case of beer and a napkin. And I actually have a napkin framed because we drew it out. And I'm not kidding. So I want to know the conversation that happened where someone was like, I think we should build an electric auger or a conveyor, because my guess is that no different than all the farmers walking through this trade show, there was probably some internal people at Meridian and Convey-All. They were like, what? Why? So I want to know how this started. And then I want to know some of the paces, because you and I have talked about the paces, and so it's pretty impressive. And you and I have talked about how I accidentally bought an electric Polaris Ranger. I didn't know it was electric when I bought it. It came with my house. Yeah. And since I've had it, all my neighbors, so they make fun of me, and it's awesome because we all actually really like it. It works really good. But all their wives want one now because it's quiet and it works good and they don't have to fill it up with fuel. And it's just like, there's little things about it that until you used it, I thought I made a mistake when I bought it. And now if I were to buy another one, my wife asked me, if we bought another side-by-side, what would you get? And I had to say to her, so we call it the Tesla. I don't know. It's just its nickname. I said, well, does the Tesla still exist or do I have to replace it? Because if the Tesla died, we have to buy another Tesla. But if it still exists, well, then I got, a whole different story of what I want for a side-by-side. So how did the conversation go? How did the idea start? And what kind of paces have you put it through?
Okay, let's start with some of the ideas. So it seems like need breeds, or necessity breeds innovation and ideas. So you know how over the last few years it's been so difficult to get engines. Yeah. It's in everybody. Doesn't matter what size it is, doesn't matter who it is.
Doesn't matter what industry it is.
Doesn't matter what industry it is. And at the same time, alongside that is all this conversation about batteries. And you mentioned whether it's Tesla, Elon, whoever, it doesn't matter. And there's even government pushes, and they don't seem to give any programs. They're just saying you're going to make this change. But anyway, there's all this conversation in the press and all this information out there about need to go batteries. It's got to be battery operated vehicles. They're even talking battery powered combines and tractors and things like that. So my boss again, Glenn Friesen, Glenn's our senior vice president of sales and marketing, and it was his idea to start with. And even internally, you still get that dumb idea. Like honestly, whether anybody would verbalize that to Glenn or not doesn't matter. It's the idea is that how do you apply that to our customer base as it exists? Well, the first thing is you got to, will it work? And so a little bit of studying, and our guys in R&D, Sam was the fellow involved with that, and Gerald, which is our product manager on the Convey-All side. yeah, we think we can make it work, but you never know until you try it. So Glenn said, let's do it. You got permission to do the research, acquire the batteries, acquire the electronics. It's not going to work if you don't try it, and you'll never know. So thumbs up, let's make this work. So while they were doing that, marketing in this situation usually isn't involved in this at this time. It's just some kind of a brainchild. But they made the mistake of talking to us about it, and they're mentioning it to me. And I says, number one, we need to give it some kind of name, and we need to have some kind of, we got to lock this down. And will we be the only ones that apply a battery to an auger and conveyor? Absolutely not. But the point is we need to protect this a little bit. So we tried to get a name even for this product that we haven't even got on the machine yet. All we know is that it's going to be batteries. The engine's gone. We're going to be batteries on there. And is this for just the conveyor? Is it just for this conveyor or just this model? No, we got to think past that. We want to, create something. If this does work the way we hope to, we want to be able to use it on everything. So long story short, we locked down the Volt. We got that figured out and did some trademarking and some patenting. And so then the testing comes. And so we brought it, what was the first? Oh, Ag in Motion. That was the Ag in Motion in July was the first time. So we had a terrible time getting these batteries. So Ag in Motion, for sake of a date, was, say, July 20th. The batteries showed up. It would have been the 17th. So if the 20th was the show day one, it was 3 days ahead of that. And so Gerald and some of the guys worked around the clock through the night to get this thing, and they get it on there and get it hooked up, get it wired up, turn the key. It works. Okay, we got power. Actually, the lights work and all that. This is awesome. And because they didn't replace any of the hydraulics, the hydraulic pump and everything was there. All they had to do was connect to the hydraulic pump to turn, so they could now run this conveyor. So we didn't run any product through the unit. The unit itself is a Convey-All 1650 oilseed series that had 1 million and plus pounds run through it already. It was through hemp, because we were testing that unit. By the way, that just worked extremely well. But that was on the hemp test for oilseed. So we brought it to the show at Ag in Motion. We'd probably turn the key on once or twice. That's all that happened to it. But we could run it. We turned the belt. The press was happy. We were happy. Dealers saw it. Customers hated it. Then said, "Wow, that's a good idea." That was sort of the first week experience. And then it's gone on a road trip to various shows, it was down in the U.S. and some of the shows down there. And then we finally got to run canola through it. I believe it was in September. And so we were at a large farm in the Dakotas, and Jacob and I flew down there, and we wanted to do this video shoot. And again, farmer was pretty skeptical of this crazy thing, because he'd bought one of our large, I think it was a 22-110 with a big diesel engine on it, and he said, that's what I need, and that's the way to go. And what's this battery operated thing? But he has semis coming in all the time. Like, I don't know how many dozen semis come into his yard every day. And we says, can we all we want to do is try this thing out, take some pictures, and so we can show some guys, show some dealers. And all of a sudden, by the way, back up. We haven't been able to even set this thing, like I talk how you can tweak the computer in there to flex it a little bit, so get as much jam out of it as you can.
Like the power curve, right?
The power
Just
curve.
Just like you turn a vehicle.
Yeah. And so it's still, everything's factory settings. There's nothing been adjusted on it yet. Well, we couldn't believe we loaded this semi in about 11 minutes, and with canola. And so two things. Number one, we're really impressed because there was no spillage whatsoever. We couldn't find a kernel in this guy's nice pad. So, okay, the oilseed series part worked really well. But the most amazing thing was he says, okay, that conveyor stays here. No. It's not.
There's only one. Yeah, that's like my wife and this electric side-by-side now, the Tesla. Yeah. She's like, no, like, I need this. I'm like, you need it. It's mine. Yeah. He's like, no, it stays. Okay, fine.
So we did let him keep it for a week, and he ran it some more, and I don't believe he ever did charge it up. We hadn't charged it up, by the way. Like, so I just noticed here this morning this thing's running at 80 percent, but we haven't charged it in a long time. It's been weeks, and we're not running high volume of product through it. But so we tested it there. We're very, very happy with it. We have some things that we're going to be doing to it here before it goes to Tulare, to the World Ag Expo. We will be taking the hydraulics off it. It's going to be 100% electric driven, and it's going to be even more efficient yet. But we were concerned that when we did run product through it that we'd lose a bunch of capacity. Did not lose capacity. In fact, I think it may have even bumped a little bit, just because to get volume out of anything like this, you need horsepower. You need to have power. And whether it's a gas engine, diesel engine, doesn't matter. And this thing seems to have lots. It works very, very well. So we're still the same capacity as we had on the oilseed series before. So just around that 9,000 bushel an hour, which, believe me, you can make a big mess at 9,000 bushels an hour.
Where's this all going?
Where is it going? Well, I don't think it's the answer for every conveyor auger out there. It really isn't, because there are places where you need to have that are so remote. But I think it demonstrates again agriculture's willingness to adapt, to be real. We're not trying to change the world. We're just trying to be a part of this world. If that's a dumb statement here, and we're not even trying to lead the move to battery and to away from natural use of gas. And I don't think anybody really knows where it's going for certain. We just know we're taking the next step. Yeah. And that may not be a straight line where it goes to. When they started talking autonomous tractors and autonomous
which they have been for years.
Yeah. But again, everybody, give your head a shake, guys. You can't, we need to have somebody behind that steering wheel. Well, we're learning, maybe we don't. And it looks different than it did 5 years ago, and it definitely looks different now than it did 10 years ago. But it's real. Yeah. And I guess we're the same thing with this battery, is it? And there's many applications for it. There are so many different applications for it, and we won't know what they're all going to be like in the forever. But
I always thought it was a Saskatchewan thing where people were really, especially in the ag industry, very resistant to change. And your first reaction is hell no. No. But and maybe it's more of an agricultural thing there's a lot of things moving and a lot of things changing, and a lot of people are resisting it. But I think this younger generation that's coming in are really open and willing to try new things.
Yeah, I don't think it's notorious for, and maybe it's my age talking here a bit, but notoriously, your first, when something new like that comes up, no, it's not for me. There's that resistance, but then usually a couple sleeps and you start to think, that's whether I like the idea or not, I can even do it better than that. Yeah. And that's where the innovation comes in the ag industry, because these guys think on their feet. Part of it's they want to do things themselves, and if there's something big, they want to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
I'm proud to be a part of the ag industry. I'm glad that my life, my career has never taken me out of that. Are there other paths that a person can go on? Absolutely. That I'm glad they're there, but I'm glad to be a part of the ag and say same with our company, Meridian. It's a good place.
You can take the boy off the farm, but can't take the farm out of the boy.
I think that you're right. That's good.
So what do you think the most important part of being a part of the ag industry is?
I just think that relationships in the ag industry are extremely powerful and very, very important. Those relationships with the customers fall down if you don't have good relationships with your vendors. And, we look at this as very much a three-way partnership, if you want to say. We can't be in every community without you. We can't have a plant in there's 1,000, 2,000, maybe 3,000 communities in Saskatchewan alone, right? Meridian can't be in every one. But the dealers and your sales team, you can be. And so we partner with you as a dealer, and you have that direct connection with your local customers. You're not going to have the same relationship with one of your sales guys in Yorkton as he can't have the same relationship as he would a friend and customer in Yorkton as he would, say, in Swift Current. That's why you have another guy in Swift Current. And but it's still flying the Flaman flag that's sourcing some Meridian product or whatever it might be. So.
Okay, well, I guess that wraps things up for today. We'd like to thank Sid for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you for listening to Flaman Connect. For Mitch Flaman and Regan Kunz, I'm Trevor Grinde. Join us next time. Talk to you soon.